went looking for trouble. And boy, I found her. She's in love with herself. She likes the dark. Grey Wolf Studios.
What's up, guys? It's me, Grey Wolf. Back to do another video for you. This is finally the last video in my video series. My video series is Electric RCs for Beginners, or Electrics 101. This video series is geared toward the complete beginner, the total noob, if you will. My goal for this video series was a video series that somebody who has never been in the hobby before, or somebody that maybe has been in the nitro side of the hobby but is just coming over to electrics for the first time, maybe it's something that either way you go, you need there's a lot of basic knowledge that you need for electrics, and I'm hoping that my video series delivers at least 90, if not like 98 or 99% of that information that you need, not only to help get you going and maybe even point you in the right direction, but also to help you make more informed and accurate decisions about what you should buy, and what'll hopefully give you a sense of kind of how things work, so to speak. Anyway, this particular video segment is going to be on gearing. Gearing is such a huge thing. This probably shouldn't actually be the last video in the segment, but it is for whatever reason. It was just I just happened to write it down last on the list, so it's getting made into the last video. But gearing is very, 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 very important. I can't stress enough how important it is. Gearing is everything, actually. Well, not everything, but once you get your motor sorted, which, unless you are going for a particular setup, typically most people should should want to, or will want to pick a motor that's somewhere kind of in middle of the road in terms of kV rating for the particular size kit that they're putting it in. For example, if you're putting a 540 or 550 size motor in a 1/10 scale vehicle, typically what you want to do is you want to start with something that is middle of the road power wise, or kV wise. Something probably between 3,500 and 4,000 kV would be considered middle of the road for 10th scale. Now, if you have a particularly heavy 10th scale, you're going to need a motor with a little more torque to it. So you're going to want to either get a 4-pole motor, or maybe get a 550 can motor instead of a 540 can motor. Or you may actually want to lower your kV a little bit. Say if you had something really particularly heavy, like a Losi SCTE, which is Losi's 10th scale short course truck. The SCTE is a great short course truck, but it's heavy. I mean, it's heavy as a pig. I mean, it's a really beefy short course truck. So for something like that, you might actually want to consider backing your KVs off a little bit, going with a more torqueier motor. Something maybe instead of the 3,500 to 4,000 range, maybe you want to look at the 2,500 to 3,500 range, something like that. And on the opposite side of that scale, let's say you have something that's really light, like let's say you have a two-wheel drive 10th scale buggy, for example. Well, you don't need a lot of torque to push a two-wheel drive 10th scale buggy because there's nothing to them. They're very light. They're relatively small for a 10th, even for a 10th scale. So you don't need a lot of torque to push that. So in that case, you might actually want to look at a little bit higher kV motor, maybe something in the 4,000 to 5,000 range, let's say. 10 scale motors, I think, they go all the way up to probably somewhere around the 6K neighborhood. I can think of at least one 10 scale motor that is a 5,800 kV motor. So I know for a fact they go up to at least 5,800. They may even go higher than that. I'm not sure. I've never actually looked into motors with that high of a kV rating because I just don't use them. And I said all that to say this. If you're dealing, it's easier to deal with a motor that's kind of middle of the road for the kit that you're using, because really where you get your speed or torque from, because remember, if you remember back to previous videos, you either get one, any adjustments that you make, you either get one or the other. You're either making an adjustment to gain some low end torque or low end acceleration, but the cost of getting that is lowering your top end speed a little bit. And vice versa, if you're making a change to get more top end speed, you're going to give a little bit of that low end torque and low end acceleration up. So in my opinion, especially for bashing, in my opinion, the best thing to do is grab a middle of the road motor and let your gearing do all the work for you. Your gearing, you can use, if you want more top end, throw a bigger pinion on it. If you want more low end torque or more acceleration, throw a smaller pinion on it. You can do a lot with changing your gearing ratios in terms of adding or subtracting speed and acceleration or acceleration. Or I should say speed or acceleration. You can only make adjustments for one or the other. You can't do both at the same time, at least not typically. So anyway, it's really crucial in electrics to have a really nice selection of pinions. You really want a wide variety of pinions, because pinions are basically how you fine tune your RC. It's just, I don't even know how to compare it. It's adjusting your pinion, and the changes can actually be, or the adjustments rather, can actually be made with the spur gear as well. Now, for those of you that are really truly brand new to the hobby, I'll just go ahead and briefly explain. Your spur gear is generally much bigger than a pinion gear, and it is generally connected to the transmission, or sometimes is part of the center differential, depending on whether your kit has a center differential or whether it has a transmission. Your spur gear is actually the big gear that's connected to the transmission. Now, if you don't have a transmission and you have a center differential, the center differential itself is basically the pinion, and you can change that center diff in some cases. Some models do offer different teeth counts on those center diffs, so you can buy a special center diff, replacements diff case or whatever, for it that that will change the number of teeth in that ring. Now, but generally, unless unless you're really trying to do some extreme tuning, most of your actual tuning is done with the pinion gears. Now, the pinion gears are, let me just move some of this stuff out of the way here, and I'll just keep this 1/8 scale motor and this 10th scale motor here. Actually, I'll use this 10th scale motor because this has a smaller rotor. I use these two as examples. So here's a few different examples of pinion gears. Let me zoom in here a little bit so you guys can see what I'm doing. These are 3 different examples of pinion gears. Now, your pinion gears are the gears that actually go on the shaft or the rotor of the motor. And as you can see on, let's see if I can get a good shot of this. On the pinion gear, you can see inside there's a grub screw sticking through, which is also visible here on top. So essentially, that grub screw is actually going to fasten down on the flat side of this rotor. This side of the rotor that you're looking at right here is flat, and I'll show you here as I turn it. I think you can, well, here, if you look at the end, trying to center it up here. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but one side of this round shaft is flat, and that actually goes, that grub screw, and let me back this out a little bit so I can show you guys. Okay, so yeah, that grub screw actually slides down over the flat part of the shaft, or the rotor rather. Either way you want to call it, shaft, rotor, it's all the same thing. And then you tighten that grub screw down on that flat section of the rotor to keep it from moving. And that is essentially, this is your pinion gear. So your pinion gear is what the gear that connects to the motor. Now, there's different sizes, or what they call pitch. There's different pitches of gears, whether it's a spur gear or whether it's pinion gear. They come in different types. Now, if you'll notice on this pinion gear, if I can get my camera to focus, there it is. It says M121. That means that this is a Module 1, or an M1, or a Mod 1. Most people call it Mod 1 for short, Module 1 pinion gear, and it has 21 teeth total. Now, Mod 1 or M1, Module 1, whatever you want to call it, is the type of pitch that it is. That's the name of the pitch. And the pitch is basically just it's basically the angle and the size of the space in between the teeth. So there's Mod 1 there. Now, Mod 1 is mostly found, or it's more typically found in nitros than it is electrics. But some electrics do use Mod 1. Mod 1 pinions are generally going to be more expensive than the other 2 pitches because they, like I said, they're not as commonly used in electrics, and it's reserved more for nitros than it is electrics. And here is an example of another spur gear. And let's see if I can get in close here. The autofocus. Give me an autofocus. There we go. As you can tell, this particular gear says 21 also. But this is not a Mod 1 pitch gear. This is what's called a 32 pitch or a Mod .8. Instead of Mod 1, it's a Mod .8. Now, now this is my understanding, and I could be wrong here, but Mod .8 and 32 pitch are actually two different pitches, but they're so close and they're so similar to each other they can actually be used interchangeably. That's my understanding of it. Now I could be wrong on that aspect. Mod .8 and 32 pitch might be the same exact thing, but if you do the math, there's actually a formula you can do to calculate um, the pitch of a gear, and I forget exactly how you do that, and that's something that's beyond the scope of this introductory level video. But anyway, I wanted you guys to see that the Mod .8 or the 32 pitch, whichever you want to call it. I call it 32 pitch because like I said, I think Mod .8 is technically different. Now here's a comparison. Here's the Mod 1. This is the Mod 1 21 tooth pinion right next to the 32 pitch 21 tooth pinion. Both these gears have the same amount of teeth, but you can see that the Mod 1 gear not only has bigger spaces in between the teeth, but it's actually also just a bigger gear in general. And that's just the way it is. Now the final pitch gear is something like this guy here. This guy here is what's called a 48 pitch, and there is also a Mod .6, which is interchangeable with 48 pitch. Again, it's the same principle. I believe they're technically two different pitches, but they're interchangeable. But I could be wrong. They might both be the exact same thing. Not entirely sure. But anyway, again, side-by-side comparison. This is a 21 tooth, or no, wait a minute. Actually, I take that back. This is a 28 tooth, 48 pitch pinion right here. The silver one is. I didn't have a 21 tooth. 28 is actually, oh, come on, focus camera. There we go. 28 tooth is actually the smallest one that I had in a 48 pitch. And I don't know if you guys can see, but there is actually a 28 stamped on the lip of that pinion there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but anyway, that's there's another one of my batteries done charging. But anyway, that's the 48 pitch next to the Mod 1. And then just as a comparison, this is the 48 pitch next to the 32 pitch. Again, it's very noticeable difference. So it's actually very easy, even if they don't say M1 or something like that. Like these two don't say anything except for the tooth count. But it's actually very easy to look at these and say, oh yeah, the silver one here is a 48 pitch, and the other steel one is a 32 pitch, just because of how different they are. I've seen quite a few people make that mistake, and they'll they'll have a 48 pitch. Well, typically it doesn't happen with 48 pitch because it's just way too different. But I've seen where people will have like a Mod 1 spur gear and they don't realize it. Or actually, what's more common is, say they have a 32 pitch spur gear and they don't realize it, and they go out and buy a Mod 1 pinion and then try to run them together. Well, you're going to ruin something, because those teeth do not line up, as you can tell. Come on, camera, focus. As you can tell, those teeth do not line up at all.